qui. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. Today I will introduce the relationship between charcoal burning and vegetation. And I've just started my, this is a totally new topic in my research, so I didn't know anything nearly about charcoal burning before. And but as I finished, so I have a degree in biology, and while biology started to work with any type of land use types or management, my main aim was, when I switched to environmental history and ethnobiology in my early stage of my studies, because I realized that for the nature conservation it's crucial to understand the nature and human connections. And as in the middle, you could see this is the abandoned stage of the land use. And in the 2000, it was the main issue in the Hungarian nature conservation that the traditional land use management were abandoned, and they wanted to understand how they can restore the habitats in the best way. And therefore, to get to know this knowledge about the best way of the restoration, you need to understand the historical land use and the role, all the elements of the historical land use. So these were my basic aim, which are still my basic aim in my research, to provide information for nature conservation. And my previous study was focusing on wood pastures and forest grazing, but actually they are very linked, because it's mainly, I can say that traditional grazing management includes trees and forest in a very natural way. So this is one of my previous field sites. It is in Transylvania. And you could see that the very diverse vegetation on this pasture land, and the main actors of these landscapes are the livestock and the people you could see around, and there are also dogs. They are also very important in grazing. So the next. So as my topic now is charcoal burning, and as I said, that it's a very new topic for me. So until now, basically, I know charcoal burning because one of the most beautiful wood pasture in Transylvania, called Kalonda, has a charcoal burning sites, and it's one of the most famous charcoal burner community lives in the village close to this place. So I know it because this is a charcoal burning site, and it already shows that the connection, actually, that there are people who are the herders and the charcoal burners. They work very close to each other, and also in the kind of nature. So how I got to this topic, to the charcoal burning, that I was invited in a coast action a couple of years ago, which is called EU Potage, and it's a network for forest byproducts, potash, tar, resin, and charcoal. And I am the leader of the environmental history group, but there are, as you could see, there are other working groups, so it's a very interdisciplinary project, and I can share with you that if you are interested in any of the forest byproducts or any in the heritage or the chemistry, archaeology, environmental history, or future perspectives, you can still join, and it's really good for the students because you can apply for conference fee and other short-term scientific mission grants. So if you are interested, I can share more. So this was that I get to know about, charcoal burning is a very interesting topic in a European scale, and especially the historical aspects. And but I was So I was trying to get some, because this cost action doesn't provide salary. So I applied for the Marie Curie fellowship project, which provides also salary, so I can work on both. And in this project, which is titled Hidden in the Forest, Environmental History and Environmental Knowledge of Charcoal Burning in Central and Eastern Europe since the 19th century, one of my main focus actually is the vegetation and its changes of active and abandoned charcoal cairns, the production sites called like it. And the other two scientific objectives are the examining the connection between people and the charcoal burning cairn, highlighting the role and perspectives of women and children, and its connection to the environmental education, and explore the traditional ecological knowledge of charcoal burners. My main study areas in Hungary and in Romania in these sites, what I introduced you, and also I'm planning to do some side work here in Czech Republic. My main methods are actually social science methods, historical and cultural and anthropological methods. So I analyze the written sources, archive photos, videos, and also I will do interviews and participant observation. So for example, after Easter, I'm going to participate in a charcoal burning workshop. And besides that, I want to understand the charcoal burning sites from the botanical perspective as well. So I will conduct botanical surveys. And not me, but one of my colleagues will planning to do a soil survey as well. So I'm just started this project. So if you have any suggestions, experience, or any knowledge which related to this topic or questions, please share me. So focusing on my more on this presentation, I give this vegetation and charcoal burning, which is a very, very general title, because the charcoal burning and vegetation has a very strong link to each other, because basically you can burn charcoal from an organic material, not just wood, any type of organic materials you can make charcoal. So you can speak from many perspectives about this topic. Now I will introduce what is charcoal burning. I will speak a bit about what is charcoal nowadays and what kind of information we can find in the literature. And I will show some preliminary results or impression from my research as well. So what is charcoal? Charcoal is a lightweight black carbon residue produced by strongly heating wood in a minimal oxygen to remove all water and volatile constituents. It's very important to highlight this lightweight character of the charcoal, because it has a strong role in the connection of the vegetation. So, as I mentioned, this is why it's very interesting from the vegetation perspective, because it's made from wood and it's very light, the charcoal. And what is charcoal burning? The charcoal burning is defined like it's a traditional version of pyrolysis process called charcoal burning, often by forming a charcoal kiln. The heat is supplied by burning part of starting material itself with a limited supply of oxygen. So in this definition, you can find that it's forming a charcoal kiln. So this will be a very interesting perspective, actually, that how you form a charcoal kiln, it will impact the vegetation. So, but back to especially in the European history, the charcoal and all around the world is that charcoal burning is basically affected by the use of charcoal and its changes. So if you want to understand the vegetation impact of charcoal burning, you need to understand also the energy history and the uses of charcoal. So in the beginning of kind of the human history. Mainly the charcoal were used for the blacksmiths, and still it's the traditional blacksmiths, they create their own charcoal nowadays. And also to make any copper materials, they used charcoal. And also it's a really important element of the gunpowder. But the main charcoal producing were when they created or established the iron factories in the 19th century. And it was the time when there was no coal. So actually the industrialization was started with charcoal and not coal. So they needed lots of charcoal. This is why usually in the forest history you can read that the charcoal burning was destroying the forest and cause deforestation. And if we go on the in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, many machines were using charcoal, also mills were using charcoal, and nowadays the main uses of charcoal is basically for gastronomy, for barbecue all over the world. But there is a very interesting, I just found out last week that there is a very interesting connection to Brno as well, the textile industry. So in the beginning of the 19th century, one of the main uses of charcoal was for using iron. And the reason why they needed to have this charcoal iron, because the Czech, not just the Czech, but the German and the Central European textile industry created new textile types like chiffon, canvas, and it was not able to ironing in the old way, how they use this wooden, I don't know the English name, so this wood iron, traditional wood iron. So actually these textiles were spread around Europe, and they needed to have this iron charcoal. So many households used charcoal in the 20th century because these new textile types. So, and also as I look through the history, it's very interesting to see that charcoal burning is all the time actually, it's extra incomes for poor people. So this is a Hungarian crossword from the beginning of the 21st century, and it says that if I don't burn charcoal, I wouldn't make my life on my doctoral salary. So it was very interesting to see that even this sentence was put it in a crossword. And how the charcoal is made, it's also very important if you want to understand the vegetation impact of charcoal. And historically, the charcoal was made in a pit kiln, as you could see. Actually, they dig it a small pit, and they cover it, and they made the charcoal in a very small scale. And the next stage was, or it's overlap, so it's not a one-line evolutions. So it's called earth mount kiln. This is the most well-known charcoal kilns, I think, in Europe from forest history. And in the middle of the 20th century, or first part of in the 30s already, they created factories to produce charcoal. This is a charcoal factory from northern Hungary, and but nowadays it's not working anymore. And nowadays it's very common to produce charcoal outside, not in a factory, but in it's called retorart systems. As you could see, this is from Poland. This is from a Swedish example. But even at home, you can burn charcoal yourself how is it nowadays? It's very. It was for me kind of shocking when I realized that the charcoal has a huge impact on our environment still nowadays. And the FAO and the WWF have a report about the analysis of the EU charcoal market. I don't know how many of you using charcoal for barbecue or any other reasons, but this report analyzing where the charcoal comes from to Europe, and what is the origin. This was made in these graphs in 2018, so it has changed a bit, but not much. It's in this graph, you could see that the most charcoal is used in Germany, but so this is the orange is the consumption, the green the productions. But as you could see that most of them are from import charcoal, so there is other country where the charcoal is made, and after they use it in the German barbecue, basically. And where is so here is Czech Republic. There is no production, and here is Hungary, where are my field sites. They say also not there is showing that there is a little export, so there is 2 companies in Hungary, and a traditional smithman who made charcoal, and so. But you could see this shows very nicely that the most of the charcoal which is used in Europe comes from somewhere else, and this graph shows that most of the charcoal actually comes from not EU countries, so. Outside from Europe. So, so where is the charcoal comes from? This it's other nice slides showing that the countries before the war, Ukraine was a very important exporter of charcoal to Europe, but the main charcoal is from Africa and South America, what we use nowadays in Europe. And and why is it important to know it? Because the charcoal, it's really impact the environment in Africa and South America. And not in Africa, the charcoal using nowadays, it's a real issue because they not just export charcoal to the EU countries, but also most of the households in Africa, they use charcoal as a primary energy, especially for cooking. And for example, so it's still nowadays activities, and especially the women, they are going and collect any type of wood, and they make charcoal from it for their uses. And this is the Brazil example, which has so in Brazil, the charcoal is mainly still used for the iron industry to create this pig iron. And but interestingly, it was introduced by the Europeans, this kind of charcoal burning, so it was not a traditional activities, and mainly the slaves were making charcoal in Brazil, and they are using this kind of kiln, or it's called igloo oven, where they produce charcoal. So it's already, I think, introduced you that the charcoal burning is a very diverse activity. So if we speak about vegetation and charcoal burning, we couldn't say one summary example or one sentence to summarize what is the connection between vegetation and charcoal burning. So I will talk about later this one. So in the literature, there are many papers actually about the vegetation and charcoal burning, especially from the tropical region. There is a nice review from more than 10 years ago. It was published in 2013, but it still nicely shows that that the deforestation caused by, this is the deforestation in the tropical regions, and these black bars are showing the charcoal deforestation caused by charcoal production. So you could see that there is still a strong impact on the vegetation. And also not just vegetation, it has a very strong social aspects of charcoal production in all around Africa. Just back to the vegetation, there is this study showing also the species which are using, and for example, this is this African rosewood, Pretocarpus erinaceus. It's really threatened by charcoal burning, and because over-exploration and overuse. And this is how you could see how the charcoal transporting nowadays in Africa. So it's already could have an impact. And not just showing bad examples, because it's a very huge environmental crisis in Africa, which caused by charcoal burning. Therefore, in the last couple of years, they started to establish or tried to find an environmental friendly way to produce charcoal. And one of the good practices is from Namibia, where they use using blackthorn acacia for charcoal burning, which is an invasive species, and actually it's spreading across especially on the pasture lands. So it's this is a solution to cut this invasive species, and they can have income as well and energy supply. And this is a paper from Brazil, which showing also the non-native species, which is used for charcoal. And as you could see in these regions in Brazil, they use only just eucalyptus for charcoal burning, and other species are using in these regions. So it's also against that we need to find out what kind of tree species is used for charcoal and what are other solutions could be used it, and to find the way. And so there in the tropical region, there are many papers about how the current and the active charcoal burning affects the land use. But this paper showing a very interesting study about urban forest in Rio de Janeiro, which was a place where they burned charcoal, but after the abandonment of charcoal burning, the forest recovered, and it became a very diverse and species-rich forest. And it's not, and it was it's still important for the local peoples, and which were the charcoal burners before. Usually they are very poor. Because they were also slaves before, and they are still living in this forest. So. It has, but the origin of this place is rooted in charcoal burning. And what about Europe? In Europe, if you look for charcoal burning and vegetation paper, usually you can find information in the archaeological literature. For example, this is a very nice study from UK, where they investigated and charcoal analysis of charcoal burning platforms in Cumbria. And nowadays, the different area photographs and LIDAR analysis are very helpful to identify charcoal burning sites, because it could be seen. So these are the small circles, and but still, as the other papers also mentioning all the time, you need to check out on the field as well. And this is the hills. Here you could see on this picture. So you can imagine that in the Middle Ages it were charcoal burnings in this valley. And what can the archaeological investigation could tell us about the vegetation? It could have information about what kind of wood they use, and also they can have information about, based on the rings, what kind of, how they managed the forest and where the wood comes from. So it was a pollard tree, or it was a high stand tree, or a larger tree. And in this place, one of the main wood species were the fraxinus sites. And there are lots of papers about the archaeological findings of charcoal burning, and in 2022, a review were published which titled as "Do Small Landforms Have Large Effects?" A review on the legacies of pre-industrial charcoal burning. And I was very happy when I found out this paper, but I realized that it's also have not much knowledge about or information about how the charcoal burning affecting the vegetation. It's really emphasizing more the archaeological findings of charcoal burning and also how it affects the soil, but also they reconstruct how these former charcoal killing sites affect the vegetations, which is all, it says that it's very diverse. It's nearly each paper can have different results, but itself of the charcoal burning sites, it's a very rich full of charcoal, so it's a very rich soil, which can be helping the germination success of beech and the survival of oaks and leeks, for example. And so this former charcoal burning sites, it's creating a micro-habitat in the forest, which are very important to have more diverse forest. And as I said, that my main study area is in Hungary, and even the archaeological studies are very scarce in Hungary. But just recently, a study was published about northern Hungarian region, where they reconstruct the vegetation and the stand composition from the charcoal which were found in the former burning sites. And these burning sites from the Middle Ages and a couple of them from the modern ages. And they wanted to find out how especially the Fagus sylvatica were represented in the charcoal, but because, as you know, because the climate change, the beech forests are decreasing in Hungary and dealing with a lot of issues and problems. So what the main findings were that in some places the fagus were the most important wood which were used for charcoal, and some places the quercus and the carpinus. And this is what I also found in the ethnographical literatures, that in Hungary the fagus, carpinus and quercus were mainly used for charcoal burning. And in this paper they also checked the current vegetation of these former charcoal sites, but I don't go now in deep. So to go to my research, as I was trying to find what is the best way to understand the vegetation and the charcoal burning connections. And what I found also in the ethnographical literature and also in the tropical and European papers, that we really need to separate the different stages of charcoal burning. So the charcoal burning has 4 main stages. Actually, you need to collect the wood somewhere. You need to in this picture from the 18th century, here is somebody who's cutting a tree. Somebody needs to create these charcoal kiln sites, and also during the productions, and also after the productions, it's just nearly ready, the charcoal, the transport, it also could have effect on the vegetation. And because if you are reading a historical paper in any forest, you could find that the charcoal burning caused deforestation or degraded the forest. So, but if we would like to understand more deeply how this deforestation happened or this degradation, we need to understand these 4 different stages of charcoal burning. So now I will show you about my research, how I work now. So I'm visiting the museums and doing analysis work of the old written sources and unpublished research data of charcoal burning. And also I am collecting archive photos from the museums and from the different databases and videos to understand these four stages, as because we have just these three active company in Hungary. I want to understand how it happened when it was a much larger scale. Because also I haven't mentioned you, but for the reason why I started to focus more on the active productions, because if you want to understand the forest history when it was a very common land use type, we need to understand how the active management is influencing the forest vegetation, and because the archaeological studies are showing really how archaeological sites look like and what we can reconstruct. But the working activities, it's needs to understand from a current work or a recent studies. So most of the studies also showing that are from this part of Hungary, which is at the northern part of the Hungary, and the written sources are mainly wrote by ethnographers or forestry people. And most of them were published in the middle of the 20th century, and the last publications were in the end of the 20th century, and there was a master thesis in 2009 which were published. So we don't have also much studies from the last couple of years to understand, for example, the current charcoal productions. So this kind of papers are very important for us. And also to have a critical analysis on these papers, you need to understand who wrote this paper, why, and when, and where. And because most of the papers which are published or not published, they were written by ethnographers who had a different aim to describe the charcoal burning. For example, because the charcoal burners were a large group of charcoal burners in Hungary came from Czech Republic and Slovakia. So it was many ethnographers did study there because the language, and not because of charcoal burning, but they were describing the charcoal burning because it was the most important work in the village. So, but not just this Czech and Slovakian original people were producing charcoal in Hungary, but also the charcoal burning was an important job of the gypsy people to create any blacksmith or copper work. So it's already that who is burning the charcoal, it will have a different impact on the vegetation. And there is just a short overview of the history of the Hungarian charcoal burning, which has also needs to define when we are speaking about the impact itself, because beginning of the collectivization, the charcoal burners had a different systems. So they were more family-based, but after the collectivization, the charcoal burning were mainly organized by also the forestry. And nowadays there are private companies. This is the factory, the Forest Chemist Company, which are not producing charcoal anymore, but it was very important as well. And this picture is a traditional smithman who is making charcoal nowadays. So the first stage, that you need to collect the wood. Where is the wood come from? And as I mentioned, you know, the charcoal is a very light thing, and therefore it was very important to explore forests where it was hard to access by any type of transport. So in a hilly site or a very so in places in the forest which was really hard to transport the wood, so it was better to transport a light charcoal than a wood. So this is also was very important. So the where is the wood come from? It's the different forest management also defined that it was a coppicing, a high stand forest, or it was a selective cutting or clear cutting, or it was the main aim to create a pasture land. In one of the cases I found out they produced charcoal from the trees on the pasture land. So and the next stage is creating the production site, which is a very micro scale activity. They the charcoal burners had good knowledge on the soil, so also they had to check out the soil, and it had to be a very flat region, but also what kind of habitat the charcoal burning kiln were. So this is also, I don't know what is your imagination, but I was very surprised because there is the picture showing that the kilns could be in a meadow or in a closed forest or on a clear-cut areas or on a pasture land, or it's a former mining area where they burned charcoal. And how the productions were carried out, it was also had a small impact, and what kind of tools they used for during the charcoal burning. These are the traditional ones, which are basically not much changed in the last 200 years. And during the productions, the charcoal burners they use the wood, but also there is very important to use the forest litter to cover the kiln. And after, but not just forest litter, in some places they use hay or trough. So it's very depends on the charcoal burners and the region how they cover the kilns. And after they cover these plants with sand or soil. And how actually the productions also takes part, because in these places, for example, everything was made by hand. But for example, in this, and it's not in the same time, so it's both of them in the 80s. And in this place where, as you could see, machines were helping the charcoal burners to carry the wood. And also the lifestyles of the charcoal burners had an impact on the vegetation, because the charcoal burning is one of the activities which you need to stay outside in the forest for at least 1 week or more. So the charcoal burners, usually they build a hut for them, and also a fireplace. So it has also a small scale impact on the forest or the area where the production happened. And because these people lived in the forest for weeks or months, they also had a strong connection to the nature. They knew it very well, the mushrooms, the berries, or also they were hunting, and they know the weathers and the stars, so they have also a very deep ecological knowledge. And when we are ready with the charcoal, the next stage to prepare for the transport, there is some places where they didn't put it in the bag. They just put it on the car, or they went without package. But in the second part of the 20th century, they put it in paper bag or plastic bag on the sides, or they were transporting the charcoal and they pack it in other places. So it's all had a small scale impact, which needs to emphasize. And also as the transport happened, that it with a horse coach or with a larger one. And the social aspects and the knowledge of the charcoal burners, it has also has a different impact. As I mentioned you, that there are group of charcoal burners in Hungary whose ancestors arrived from Czech Republic, from Moravia, or from Slovakia or Germany, and they have a different knowledge than a local smithman. And these charcoal burners who arrived to Hungary, they were invited mainly by the iron factories in the 19th century to provide a large-scale charcoal burning. And in Hungary, they separating a Slovakian and a German-style charcoal burning already. So it's also important that who is burning the charcoal. And really, there is one of the village in northern Hungary. They say that even the priest was a charcoal burner. So they were really a common job in this village. But in the next village, there were any charcoal burners. And the children had also important part of charcoal burning, not because this activity was a family-based activities, and they learned charcoal burning from their childhood, and they use it as a playground as well, making small kilns as a play. So, and also how the knowledge were transferred. For example, we are in the South Hungary near Pécs, and there was a couple of people who wanted to have charcoal, and they invited Slovakian charcoal burners from northern Hungary, and it's nearly 500 kilometers in Hungary. So they came to these Mecsek mountains from Bükk mountains. They couldn't speak Hungarian, and but they created the charcoal, and they learned the charcoal burning, the local people. And when they learned how they can make charcoal, the Slovakian people went back home, and they started their business in the 30s, and they were producing charcoal for a couple of years, and it was a very good income from them. So, and this is the nowadays situation in Hungary, and these were basically my field sites. This is in Szendrő in northern Hungary. This charcoal burning sites, which looks like this. Nowadays it's close to our capital city, to Budapest, in Galgamácha. It's a very large-scale industrial charcoal burning. And this is a charcoal burning camp which will happen after Easter. And most of the charcoal in Hungary is also, it's going for export, but also you can buy it from the company. And yes, so it's a kind of summary, because summarize the charcoal burning and vegetations that for me it was very also interesting to read in this written sources that the charcoal burning were a very regulated activity. So when we are speaking about deforestation and degradations, it's very hard to find out any exact data how the degradation and deforestation happened. And especially in the 20th century, it was very well organized by the forestry, and the local foresters were checking the charcoal burners, and if they were overusing or they made any mistakes, they were not allowed to burn charcoal next year. So it was a kind of very strict regulation, but more studies needs to understand it deeply. So, Ďakujem again. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm looking forward. Thank you.
So, thank you, Anna, for your talk, and now the questions. I would like to ask what do you know about the selectivity of the wood which was used for charcoal burning? I know you mentioned some of the most common tree species, but these are generally species which are very abundant in the landscape. Is there any more specific knowledge on this?
Yes, in Hungary and in the region, the beach, the Fagus sylvatica, was acknowledged as best sources of charcoal. But in the written sources shows that they used any type of tree species, but they differentiated the quality. So the beech were one of the best quality, but for example in Slovenia, they think that the Hazel, the Corylus is the best for charcoal. And to check other regions' photographs, I can see that really also what kind of size of wood they use for charcoal, it's very different. So in these pictures, mainly the wood looks like that it comes from a high stand forest, but in the historical says that we're using more coppice forest for charcoal burning. So yeah, it's still, but actually they says that any type of tree species could be used. And but also I had just a very short interview of foresters who were selling trees in the end of the 20th century for the last charcoal burners in the Book Mountains, and he said that he was selling the trees which were it was not a clear cut, so it was usually they're cleaning the forest. So they provided the cutting rights for the charcoal burners to clear the forest for the unnecessary wood from a forestry perspective. So it's more a shrub or a high shrub size of trees were cutted, and especially I think Carpinus and even Acer. So the tree species which are not useful for the forestry.
Thank you. Some other questions? There is one.
I think I can be loud enough.
It's also for the record.
Thank you. Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting, and it hit home because of my family's history in the Book Mountains that this story is about. Could you tell us a little bit more about the exchange of know-how that you already touched upon? The exchange of know-how of charcoal burning that you mentioned, that there were two different separate methods of charcoal burning in Hungary. Was it typical in East Central Europe, or was this specific case representative for the Kingdom of Hungary? And also, could you please tell us a little bit more about how this knowledge that was, if I understand correctly, imported into the Kingdom of Hungary was perhaps circulated between communities? You already mentioned one example between the Northeast and the Southwest, but perhaps there were some other examples, I presume. Thank you.
Thank you very much. These communities were invited when the iron factories were established in the northern Hungary or in other, basically most of them were in northern Hungary. So this was the main reason. And these villages also in Hungarian, but it's called Huta villages. It's in the Bükk Mountains or Matra Mountains or Zemplén Mountains. So they are kind of common, very strong communities, and even today they have a very strong identity, and even they speak Slovakian mainly, and so they keep their, they don't produce charcoal anymore, but they keep their identity. And what I can see from other parts of Europe, that this kind of earth-mount charcoal kiln, and especially in Central Eastern Europe, it's a very homogeneous. So there is not much differences. So, for example, there is because most of the charcoal burning happened because of the iron factories. Alexandra Raab from Eastern Germany, she has a very nice paper about large-scale charcoal burning in eastern part of Germany for iron factory as well. So I think in this time, and also I know that the charcoal burning was taught in the forestry school as well. So it was not like a grazing, which was not in the school books for the foresters, but charcoal burning was, they had to learn about it. So I think it was a very, and there are introductions how to burn there are books, I mean, from the 19th, 18th century about charcoal burning, and as this picture in the beginning of my presentations, it is from also the 18th century, which shows basically the basic techniques. And you are asking also about the knowledge transfer, and it was very common actually that not just this large distance north and south knowledge transfer, but for example in Hegyalja, in Tokaj, I mean it's also in northern Hungary, but Hungarian village people, they also did the same as they did in South Hungary, that they invited the charcoal burners from the Slovakian village, and they learned how to burn charcoal, and they started a charcoal burning. So this is how it happened, but it's still need to do some research to get more knowledge about it.
Thank you. Some more questions? There is one.
Yeah, thank you. Because I'm more from like a history background, I would ask about the social history perspective. That you mentioned that one of the branches, I guess the ones in Transylvania, I mean Romania, tend to be gypsies who are charcoal burners. So what about, I mean, because being a Roma, even in 18th, 19th century, was considered to be low status. So was this job associated with having low social status? And if so, is it only typical of like Central Europe, or for example, if you looked at the other examples like South Asia or Africa, is this activity associated with low social status, or yeah? So what about this perspective?
Thank you. The charcoal burning which were carried out by gypsies, it was the main reasons because they were professional blacksmith people. So for the blacksmiths, you need charcoal. So this was the reason. So they didn't burn charcoal because they wanted to sell just charcoal. They use it for their own uses. And also for copper making, to make a bell, for example, for the herders. So basically they made a bit more like a pit cairn. So like they make a small dig, and they created a very small scale charcoal burning, like in households in Africa. So they didn't build this like big mound earth cairn like in this picture. But also what I know that the charcoal burners in the 19th century across Europe, but especially in Western Europe, but there are data in Hungary as well, they were travelers. So they were not located in one village. They were traveling through the country, and where they had some job, they had to, especially during the 19th century when they were creating arable lands from the forest. So they know that there is some estate where they want to clear cut the forest. So they went there, they produced charcoal because it was a very good income to sell in the growing iron factories. So it was also, they were traveling through the countries. And also I know that in England. And your other questions, there is a very nice paper from a Czech researcher, Jirka Vojic, about that. He introduced that the charcoal burners were acknowledged people, I think during the iron factories Age, and after it became less and less acknowledged communities. But I think they are not, couldn't be compared with the gypsy, and because the gypsies were making charcoal for themselves, so it was, I think, a very different one. But for example, I found out that still nowadays in a project which would like to help the Roma people, they listed as a traditional activity charcoal burning. So as a
more questions?
Thank you. Thank you for this very nice presentation. I will ask you from quite different perspective. So you spoke about the places which were used. So I would like to know if you are able, based on the remains of charcoal, say how repeatedly they were used and how old they are, because I think this is very old history behind this charcoal burning.
It's a very good question and a very important one as well. And what I know that it's for the best, to find out the best place where you can establish a kiln. It's kind of hard. So if they had a good site to burn charcoal, they use it for many ages or decades or even more 100 years. Because it's not just had to be flat, it had to be close to the water as well, and it had to be reachable by any transport as well. So there are lots of different aspects that they need to consider, and also this was the soil was also an important character of the site, and what also was important to use the former charcoal sites, for example, because to cover this mound kiln, it's very usable, the former soil of the former charcoal kiln. So if you are reusing an old site, you can find out this type of soil. So it's also could show a continuity. And but what I found out now that if we say that it's a very long tradition of charcoal burning, for me it's very interesting to see that I don't know that in Hungary that is the lack of research, that we don't have a lot of charcoal burning localization, or this could be one of the reasons, or it's also because the charcoal were not using in the household very often. So it was very specific uses in the, even in the Middle Ages, but in the 18th century, 19th century, it was really connected to these iron factories. So, but it's a good question.
More questions? I want to ask regarding the effects of charcoal burning on flora and vegetation. Well, I can imagine that the disturbance was connected to these sites, so some pioneer species and heliophilous species were probably more abundant here than in the surrounding forested landscape. Do you know of other effects on flora and vegetation, and do you know of any plant species that somehow preferred such sites?
I'm also very interested in this, and which is also very surprising for me that there is no study from Europe about this. So most the European charcoal burning studies, botanical studies, are focusing on the former charcoal burning sites, so which were abounded for 100 years or more. So it's not of course, there are some impact of the former charcoal burning sites, but not on the active or 1 or 2 years abandoned sites. I have only one experience from Slovenia from last year that the charcoal burning happened in July. I visited the site in August, and it was already, from the distance, you could see that it was covered by grassland, basically grass and perhaps Bellis perennis, so it's a very couple of weed species. But if you went to the sites, you could see the black between them, and even the soils were very so you could easily dig in it, and it was very moistured. So I am hoping that I could carry out a botanical survey, and I can answer for this question, because my plan was to make a review about it, but I couldn't do it because unfortunately there is not, I couldn't find any papers which emphasize this question yet about the active sites and not the long-term abandoned sites.
I wonder whether people here know some examples of species that prefer such sites. I know there is one very interesting and very rare species in the Czech flora, Geranium bohemicum, which is said that it preferred such sites in the past, and then it became almost extinct, or it was missing for a long time, and I think there is some find a couple of years ago. Do some of you have any experience with this topic? Of course, the moss Funaria hygrometrica, it's I think well-known example of species which prefers such sites. Are there more questions? If not, I have last one. Do you know Czech black and white movie from the 50s, The Proud Princess, Pyšná princezna? So you should watch it, because there is a very nice scene from the forest, from the place where the charcoal was burned. So also for you to get more familiar with the Czech culture. So that's all for today. So thank you very much once more for your talk.